Conflicts in relationships. Every day we face challenges in our relationships. Sometimes it might be as simple as feeling frustrated with your partner. Other times it could be more serious, like if your partner lies, cheats, or even causes physical harm. It's hard to put these situations into neat little categories because they vary so much. Some might think you can rank these behaviors on a scale, but in reality, there's no simple way to say one behavior is worse than another. How serious a problem is depends on the individual experience of each person and their unique relationship. Talking honestly about relationship problems can be surprising. Everyone causes minor issues for others, whether intentionally or unintentionally. Many of these problems are small and easily handled without confrontation. Aggression comes in many forms, and each can negatively impact interactions. When people think of aggression, they often imagine physical acts like hitting, kicking, biting, or using weapons, anything to cause physical harm. However, communication also can be aggression. It's much more common, and involves actions that cause psychological harm, such as name calling, yelling, threatening, bullying, or trying to turn someone's friends against them. While there are many laws against physical aggression, communicative aggression often gets dismissed as protected speech or just expressing an opinion. Regardless of legal definition, it's important to recognize that aggression, whether physical or verbal, can have similar effects. So, communications scholar Renee Daly and Cameron Lee have tried to break down communicative aggression into different parts. They came up with 11 ways people can be aggressive when communicating. Verbal aggression is one, like screaming or using a mean tone. Then there is humiliation, which is degrading or making fun of someone or sharing private information about them. There's isolation, where someone tries to cut off another person from a social connection, even turning their friends against them. Withdrawal is when someone ignores or neglects a relationship. Name calling is using negative or offensive names. Dominance is controlling someone to or influence their decision or behavior. Freedom restriction is monitoring or denying someone their sort of everyday autonomy. Insecurity induction is threatening someone's well being, whether being secretive or implying potential infidelity or breakup. There are also other forms like trying to dominate a partner, taking excessive risk, or threatening things that are important to the other person. While these behaviors can seem to vary in how serious they are, how each person experiences them can greatly influence how they react. It's not really a matter of one's behavior being better or worse than another. Everyone responds differently to physical or communicative aggression based on their own experiences and their perceptions. Most experts say that healthy relationships need some conflict to grow and improve, but sometimes a conflict can feel like a violation of a relationship, especially if both people think that having no conflict is really important. So what makes conflict feel like a violation in a relationship? If one or both people don't like conflict, that can cause issues. But even more important is how people react to others during a conflict, whether they're friends, coworkers, family, or partners. One example is, imagine Ellen and her stepmother, Paige. Ellen moved back home to save money for college, but she's having a hard time because Paige still treats her like a child. Paige gives Ellen advice, tries to help her with her homework, and asks for help around the house, which makes Ellen feel like she's losing her independence. Paige notices that there's a constant conflict and it's making Ellen ignore her, which just makes Paige want to parent Ellen even more. If they don't deal with this conflict, Ellen might end up moving out again. They're stuck in an unhealthy cycle of conflict. Ellen might not be good at handling disagreements, which a lot of people do struggle with. If some conflict can actually be good for a relationship, how do we know when it's healthy and when it's not so healthy? It can really damage a relationship if we don't know the difference. Researcher John Gottman has looked into this by studying romantic partners. He found that certain behaviors can signal unhealthy conflict, no matter the type of relationship. One of those behaviors is criticism. It's normal to express problems with someone's behavior, but when criticism turns into attacks on their character, like calling them lazy or dirty, it can be a bigger issue. Contentment is another red flag. This is when you feel like the other person is worthless or treat them with disdain, maybe even making fun of them or showing you uh, don't really think they're worth your time. Defensiveness is also a problem. This is when you refuse to take responsibility for your actions or brush off your partner's concerns, not like admitting you were wrong for standing up to them. Finally, stonewalling is a big issue. This is when you completely shut down and refuse to engage with your partner, which makes resolving conflicts almost impossible and can really damage a relationship. There are five main ways that people handle conflicts in relationships, and they can vary a lot depending on the person. Here's a rundown. First, accommodating. This is when someone is cooperative but not very assertive. They might ignore their own needs to keep their partner happy. The second is avoiding. Some people deal with conflict by simply ignoring it. This is not very cooperative or assertive. There's collaborating. This is when both people talk to find a solution that makes them both happy. It is both cooperative and assertive. Number four, when someone wants to win the conflict, even if it means being uncooperative but assertive, then there's compromising. This is a mix of being cooperative and assertive. Both people give in somewhat and they find a middle ground. While it might seem like collaborating is always the best way to solve a conflict, it's not that simple. Sometimes one person might be okay with giving in sometimes, but it's not that important to them, while the other person really cares about the issue. So, for example, let's say Spencer and his roommate Brian. Brian is okay with whatever cable package they choose, but Thomas, a third roommate, really wants the pay-per-view channels for soccer matches. Brian's willing to accommodate to keep things easy, but Thomas is competing to make sure he gets what he wants. This is sort of how they handle the situation. Again, it could be a compromise, or it could just be a conflict that doesn't get solved very quickly. Deception. Now, let's say Stavros decides to go back to college after a few years in the military. He marries his high school sweetheart at 18, has two children relatively quickly, and is now pursuing his bachelor's degree in his late 30s. A dedicated student, Stavros studies quite a bit and gets decent grades. Although his wife is supportive, he really loves his children wholeheartedly. He occasionally misses the camaraderie of his former military community. With the opening of a new bar in town, the library pub, he thinks he's found the perfect solution. Once or twice a month, he tells his wife and kids that he's going to go meet up with some guys at the library, allowing them to think he's studying at his school on campus in this, the library, when in fact he's having a night out drinking beer and sharing old stories of his days in the military. Although he has a strong aversion to lying, Stavros feels comfortable allowing his wife and kids to misunderstand his statement. So we need to think about whether Stavros is really being deceptive or if he is just bending the truth a little bit. To figure that out, we need to understand what deception really means. Deception is when someone deliberately tries to make someone else believe something that isn't true. The key here is intention. If you accidentally say something wrong, you're not being deceptive. And if you're being sarcastic and you know the other person will get that, it's not deception either, even if what you're saying isn't true. So technically, Stavros might not have outright lied, but he's definitely setting up his situation to deceive his wife and children. Deception is more than just lying, though. It's useful to understand why people see deception as a problem in a relationship and know the four main types of deception that can occur. We've talked about how to communicate. That goes against the rules of relationship, can be seen as part of transgression. Now, deception is a big part of this. Even though most people value honesty in their relationships and expect the truth from their friends, families, and coworkers, as well as their partners, a leading expert on deception, Stephen McCormick, thinks of deception as an uncooperative, unethical, impractical, and disruptive task. So, because it goes against the idea that we should be truthful when we talk to each other, but it is still possible to deceive someone for a good reason. So, think about Jeremy, for example. When he was a kid, he was told he could be anything he wants to be. He still believes that, and he recently helped organize a successful social justice festival at his university even when others thought it could not be done. And then there's Laura, a realtor who knows a lot of people in her town. When she planned a surprise birthday party for her partner, she had to keep it a secret from him. So she asked the entire town to help. And finally, Seth and Mariana are getting a divorce, but they're waiting until after their daughter's college graduation before they tell her. All of these situations involve deception. It is intentional. It's an intentional told lie. But whatever they're okay depends on your own view and experiences. Was Jeremy's mom wrong to encourage him to aim high? Should Laura have just told her partner about the party? Does Seth and Mariana need to tell their daughter right away? That's different for anyone, and every situation is absolutely unique. Deception comes in many forms, and it's not always easy to spot. Sometimes people deceive each other with good intentions, regardless of the reason. Scholars have identified four main types of deception in relationships. Number one, falsification. This is what most people think of when they hear lie, making up information and presenting it as truth. Then there's omission. This happens when someone leaves out important information from a story. Exaggeration. This is when someone takes a true fact and just adds a little bit to it to often make it seem more exciting. Then there's equivalation, and this occurs when someone tries to avoid giving a direct answer by changing the topic or giving a vague response. Deception is pretty common, and people have all sorts of reasonings for doing it. Sometimes it's all about protecting ourselves or avoiding uncomfortable situations. Back in the late 1980s, Sandra Metz started looking into why people lie. One big reason is what she called self focused motive. This is where the person deceiving is mainly looking out for themselves. So, this would mean protecting myself or making myself look better. There are many examples of lying for good cause. Sense deception is something that happens pretty often in our interactions, big or small. You might be worried how to tell if someone is deceiving you. Despite what you see on TV or in movies with super lie detector skills, spotting deception isn't something that can be easily taught. There is no foolproof sign of deception. And sometimes the things we think are signs of lying are actually the complete opposite. So, for example, Bryce believes that people can't look someone in the eye when they're lying. So, Killian, knowing this, can purposely look Bryce in the eye while lying about winning a point in their racquetball game. And Bryce will believe him, even though Killian is just trying to win the game. So, what do you think this is for? Why do you think we suspect deception in relationships? Do we just ignore it and hope for the best? Interestingly, some argue that in close relationships, not being suspicious and being deceived might actually be a good thing. While deception can erode trust and lead to conflict, it can also help navigate tricky situations that might otherwise cause problems. For example, if Bill sneaks a fast food meal to avoid a diet argument at home, not telling his partner about it could keep the peace. Ignorance of Bill's little detour might actually be a good thing in this case. Other forms of partner focused deception can also help maintain satisfaction in relationships by boosting confidence and self esteem. One of the interesting things about detecting deception is that it's often easier when you already know someone well. When you're familiar with someone, usual behaviors and mannerisms, you can spot when they're acting differently, which might mean they're being deceptive. For example, if you have a friend usually makes a lot of eye contact but suddenly stops making eye contact and starts avoiding it, it could be a sign something's up. The key is to watch for patterns of behavior that are different from their usual ones. Thank you for watching.